Hi guys, this is Krista from Another Time Apothecary, and today I'm going to show you how to use Soap Calc if you've never used it before. Soap Calc is an online website and it's free, and it is the recipe calculator that a lot of soapers use to help them formulate their recipes. It's also a great site to use if you have a recipe and you need to size it up or down, or if it's in percentages, and it gives you the amounts to use. So when you go to soapcalc.net, this is their homepage, and to get started you're going to click on Recipe Calculator, and this is the calculator. Now, if you've never used it before, it can certainly be a little intimidating and confusing. It's got a little bit of a learning curve, and it took me a little while to really figure it out and get the hang of it. But once you've been using it for a while, it's really not that difficult. But I'll go ahead and I'll break things down for you. So, starting at the top where it says number 1, type a lye. NaOH is the first, and that is your sodium hydroxide. That is your lye that you're going to use when you're making a bar of soap. The next one down is KOH, and that is your potassium hydroxide, and that is the lye that you would use if you're making a liquid soap. Now we're going to be making a bar of soap for this example, so we're going to leave it at NaOH. Okay, next, number 2 is your weight of oils. You've got pounds, ounces, and grams. Now, using grams is going to give you the most accurate measurement, because remember, you want to weigh all of your ingredients. I personally like to use ounces, so I'm going to select that. And now, my mold that I use makes about 2.5 pounds, give or take, and I like to make my recipes at about 40 ounces. But whatever amount you want to make, you would enter that amount there. Now, a real easy way to figure out how much your mold holds if you don't know, or say you've got a small, like a single cavity or like a decorative mold, and you're not sure how much a soap it can hold. What I like to do is I like to take a small cup of water, and I weigh that on my scale, and then I pour the liquid into my mold, and then I reweigh my cup, so that way I know exactly how much soap or liquid that it takes to fill that mold. Now, once you've got your amount entered that you're going to be making, number 3 is your water as percentage of oils. The standard is usually about 38%, and we're going to leave it at that. Now, once you've had a couple of batches under your belt and you kind of know what you're doing a little bit more, then you can start to play around with a water reduction, and you can lower that water percentage a bit. And typically you do a water reduction so that your soap, once it's in the mold, it sets up and hardens quicker so that you can remove it from the mold faster. That's especially helpful if you're doing like a Castile soap, which would be like 100% olive oil. That typically takes a very, very long time to set up and harden in your mold until you can unmold and cut it. I made a olive oil soap with, I think, a 28% water out of my oils, and not even joking, I had that puppy unmolded in like 4 or 5 hours, and I cut it shortly after. But again, that's something that you can start playing around with once you kind of have the hang of making soap. Alright, and moving on to number 4 is your super fat. The calculator already has it set at 5%, and that's a pretty good a typical standard. A super fat is the amount of oils or fats that are left over in your soap once the saponification process has completed. It acts as a buffer. So if you accidentally mismeasure something, your batch of soap isn't going to be lye heavy. It also acts as extra moisture or moisturizing property to your soap. Say you were making a soap that was heavy in coconut oil. Now, a lot of people, myself included, find coconut oil can be very drying on the skin. In those cases, you might want to increase your percentage to 10, 20, or 30%. Because coconut oil really dries my skin, I like to make my all coconut oil soap at a 40% super fat. That's really high, but I've got pretty sensitive skin. So you can either leave your super fat at 5% for this recipe, or if you'd like it a little bit higher, feel free to increase your numbers a little bit. But once you play around and make a couple batches of soap, you'll kind of learn what percentages you personally like, guys. Okay, now moving down to number 5, your soap qualities and your oils, fats, and waxes. In this drop down box is going to be a list of pretty much any of the oils that you're going to be using. And so all you do is you scroll down and you select the oils that are going to be in your recipe. I'm going to enter in the oils for the recipe that I'm going to give you guys. So we're starting with olive oil, and then you can either click add or the red plus sign, and you're just going to keep doing this for all of the oils in your recipe. Alright, so next up we have got coconut oil. And typically you're going to be selecting the 76-degree coconut oil. That's your standard everyday coconut oil that is solid at room temperature, but melts nicely with a little bit of warmth. And our last oil that we're going to be using in this recipe is palm oil. Alright. And now I like to do my recipes and percentages. If you already have a recipe that's in ounces or grams, you would, if it was in grams, you would select grams, and you would enter in the amount that you have in the white column. Same if your recipe is in ounces. Change that back over to 40. And since the recipe I'm giving you guys is in percentages, we are going to start there. Let me just click over real fast so I can see the amounts that I need. Alright, so our recipe calls for 46% olive oil, 27% coconut, and 27% palm. Once you have all your oils and the percentages or the amounts entered, you're going to go down here where it says calculate recipe, and you're going to click that. And voila, it's transformed your percentages into the appropriate amounts that you need for your scaled recipe. And now, going back down where it says view or print, if you click that, it'll bring up all your numbers in one nice place. And you can print this recipe, you can take a screenshot of it, save it on your phone. But here we've got your total oil weight. It'll show you your water percentage, what your super fat is, what your lye concentration is, what your water to lye ratio is. And it'll show you exactly how much you need for your recipe. So for ours, we're going to need 15.20 ounces of water, 5.70 ounces of lye, 40 ounces of our oils. We're not using fragrances for this recipe, but if we were, it's having us enter in 1.25 ounces of a fragrance. And it gives you your soap weight before it is cooked, if you're doing hot process, or before it's fully cured and all the water evaporates out for cold process. And here's the breakdown of the amounts. 18.40 ounces of olive and 10.80 ounces for both coconut and palm. And again, it gives you the amount also in pounds or grams if you would rather use that. And now down a little further where it says soap bar quality, it lists different qualities that you like to look for when you're creating your recipe. It's got the hardness, cleansing, conditioning, bubbly, creamy. It provides an approximate range of what most soapers aim for, and it shows what your recipe has. Now, in our recipe, the hardness is 43. That's a fairly decently hard bar of soap. The cleansing number is 18, which it's a little bit high, but that's because of the coconut oil. Your oils like coconut, palm kernel, babassu nut, those are all very cleansing oils. Now, by cleansing, we don't mean how well it cleans your body. All soap, regardless of the number, is going to clean you. For these purposes, the cleansing number is an indicator of how strong or how well that your product is going to strip oils and some moisture from your skin. So the higher the cleansing, the stronger the bar is going to be at stripping oils and some moisture from your skin. Now, if you find that with the higher cleansing numbers, your skin gets a little bit dry or flaky or itchy, you can play around with the soap calculator, and you can lower the cleansing number, or alternately or in addition, you can increase the super fat so that there's more oils left over in the soap to make it more moisturizing to your skin. Okay, moving on, conditioning. Our soap is 54. That's a fairly decent conditioning bar of soap. Bubbly is 18, and creamy is 24. Obviously, bubbly is the bubbles. Creamy is more of like the thickness of the lather, and the texture of it. So we've got a nice, thick, creamy, and a decently bubbly bar of soap. And iodine, okay, I'm no expert in all of this stuff, but I believe iodine is the amount of salt in your bar, and something like, I think it's the higher the number or the higher the range, the softer your bar can be, especially once you're at or over like the 70 number mark. But ours is 56, so that's a fairly good number. And the INS, go ahead and ignore that. I'm not exactly positive what those totals mean. I've heard that the ideal magic number that you should aim for is 160, which we're pretty darn close with a 157. But, I, and along with many other people, we've had soaps that have had an INS, higher and lower than that range, and they've produced a beautiful bar of soap. So go ahead and ignore that number. It really doesn't come into play. So there you have it. I hope that helps you out a little bit. Like I said, it's not that hard once you figure out what you're doing. One other thing I do want to point out real fast is when you select an oil, so let's just pick almond oil, and we're not going to add it into a recipe, but when you select that one oil, over here on the left side, it has your soap qualities. It'll display what the properties are for that particular type of oil. So that can be really helpful when you're trying to create a recipe from scratch. So here we can see almond oil, it's low on cleansing, but it's very conditioning. It's not very bubbly, but it's going to add a lot of creaminess to your soap. Let's pick another one. All right, let's pick Babassu. Here we can see that the Babassu oil doesn't give a lot of hardness. And even though it says it doesn't give a lot of cleansing, Babassu oil will certainly help in your cleansing numbers, but it has a lot of conditioning properties in it. So, just go around, play around a little bit. Here, I just selected castor oil. Castor oil is a wonderful oil to add to your soaps if you're looking to increase the lather and the bubbles of your soap. I know a lot of people put castor oil in most of their recipes, and I usually do too. As you can see, it's got the bubbly number is just off the chart. It's certainly more bubbly than creamy. And the castor oil also offers a little bit of hardness and a good deal of cleansing. Now, if you're working with castor oil, 5% is 3 to 5% is a typical amount to use. Once you start getting over 10 to 15%, your finished bar of soap might be a little bit tacky or sticky. But just play around, have some fun, get comfortable with it, and I hope this helped you out a little bit. Thanks, and I'll see you guys later.